A very, very, very good evening for the first time in 2024 to Dan Really Likes Wine. Welcome to a brand new year and welcome to the start of the show for 2024. I hope you've had a good Christmas and New Year break. If you're in the hospitality industry, as I know many of you are, it might not have been quite so restful, a busy time of year. People selling food and wine and moving around in said circles, in which case maybe you're getting a bit of a break in January and are watching the show feet up somewhere, cocktail in hand, wherever you might be. Thank you for joining us and thank you in advance for the support of Dan Really Likes Wine, brought to you by Norman Goodfellows for another year in 2024. Now, January is a month that is not always the easiest for those of us who like to drink wine because our budget and our aspirations do not necessarily match. You've blown everything on Christmas and New Year, and now you're suddenly trying to edge your way towards the end of the month while still drinking some reasonable wine. And so much as we've done over the last couple of years, I've got a few mates in today who I've sent out to Norman Goodfellows armed with the princely sum of 400 Rand to go and find 3 bottles of wine. And the directive was as such, an inexpensive, everyday, good value wine you're still happy to drink. Bottle of white, the same goes for red, and then with as much as you can manage to keep left over, a bottle you might need for that special occasion. I always have that challenge in January. My wife is born in January, and I'm trying to spoil her and look after her on her birthday when I spent everything on Christmas and New Year. So what have our guests come up with? Well, we'll find out very shortly from Matt Day, winemaker extraordinaire at Klein Constantia, also from Tšepang Molisana, one of my favorite wine writers, and then a very, very dear friend of mine, going back many years, more than we probably care to remember, Pete Goffe-Wood, not just one of the great chefs in South Africa, but one of the great wine authorities as well. And we sent them off armed with their 400 Rand to Norman Goodfellows. Now, I realize that 400 Rand is a sum that if you're a Lisa Harlow or Greg Sherwood, perhaps watching in the UK, 400 Rand's about 15 quid or thereabouts. That's one bottle of reasonable wine. And so how on earth can you get 3 bottles for it? Whereas for many South Africans, 400 Rand, 3 bottles, that's probably more than they might be paying anyway. So we've tried to hit a bit of a middle ground, and hopefully the wine that you discover via our 3 guests and myself, because I did the same exercise, will give you some guidance on some really good value you can find on South African wine and possibly foreign. I'm not sure what the others have purchased at Norman Goodfellows. That's coming up in just a moment, beating the January budget blues with some good value wine that doesn't cost too much, but still delivers something rather special. It's a really busy and cool and exciting year ahead for Dan Really Likes Wine. And over the next few weeks, you'll find out a little bit more about what we have got scheduled for the year ahead. But just before we start the first show properly with our guests, let's have a quick look at some wine news. These are some new releases from the team out at Harbordelskloof. That would be Peter Allen Finlayson, and he, when not making his Crystalline wines, is overseeing his day job, which is the wines of Harbordelskloof. And those 2 wines there, the one at the bottom is particularly interesting. That is the Amphore. That's Sauvignon Blanc, made in a selection of Amphore. And because of the porous nature of them, you've got wine that's just a little more oxidated and gives you a belter of a fruity wine that still has that acidity of a Sauvignon Blanc, but is a little different to what you might be expecting. Really worth trying out. And then the Magdalena at the top, that is a Semillon that Peter Allen has made, and that's gone into 400 and 500 litre barrels. And Semillon, I think we said at the start of last year, Semillon was a grape we were going to see more of. I think it has edged a little more into the mainstream space in 2023, but I think it's going to do even more of that in 2024. So keep an eye out for those 2 new releases from Peter Allen Finlayson and the team at Harbordelskloof. You can also head out to their garden party. Now, Farrow's Restaurant has been doing great things, and they've set up a garden party for you to go and check out. It's a really cool space. You can see some of the details there on the poster. Dogs are welcome. They've got the marimbas going. It's just a really happy, friendly space. If you'd like to check it out, those oysters and bubbly, probably appealing in particular, head over to Harbordelskloof's website and they will happily furnish you with a little more detail. Now, this is the biggest news to hit the wine world this month. Yes, I know we're only a couple of weeks into the year. This might well turn out to be the biggest wine story of the year in terms of winemakers moving. Second from left is Aubrey Beerslaar, who is going into his 23rd vintage at Connoisseur, and that will be his last. He's not cutting ties entirely. He's still going to consult, but he is no longer going to be the head winemaker. He wants to focus more on his own Beerslaar range, and understandable after more than 2 decades looking for something of a new challenge. Suzanne Krüger will join the team. Paul's daughter is assistant winemaker. Francois, who's been making the wine at Laibach and working with Aubrey for the last couple of years, will also form part of that winemaking team. And Connoisseur, who celebrated 50 years last year, experiencing some change, but it's an exciting time for them, exciting time for Aubrey, and that's all on the cards for Connoisseur as they move into 2024 with a lot of excitement. And look out for Aubrey and his Beerslaar wines coming up soon on Dan Really Likes Wine as we chat to him about the next chapter in his journey. Now, the Cape Wine Auction 2024. This is out at Murati this year on Saturday, the 3rd of February. It's a lunchtime affair kicking off at 12 p.m. Very happy to say, once again, I shall be host and auctioneer. It's a really special event, not just because it's full of cool lots and great wine and wonderful people, but principally because the money via the Cape Wine Auction Trust goes to a whole pile of really good causes in the winelands and has a massive impact, particularly on education. I love the auction. I love what it stands for. I love what it does. And under the new stewardship of Paul Kluver as chair, along with Raymond Lovu and Wendy Applebaum and Kinsey Quick and the rest of the team, they are going to be overseeing not just a stellar occasion, but money going out to make a real difference and have a real impact on the winelands as a whole. There are a few tickets still available, not many. Head over to the Cape Wine Auctions website if you'd like to come along. I'd love to see you there, and you're guaranteed a terrific afternoon and quite possibly a great night as well, because this is one that doesn't tend to end particularly early. Right, so there we go. Lots coming in the wine world in 2024. And next Monday, we're going to be talking to a number of people who'll be gazing into their collective crystal ball. Amongst them, Siobhan Thompson, Rico Passon, Evan Alexander, the export director at Vinimark, and they're going to be telling us about what they think is going to happen in the wine industry in 2024. Will they be right? Fascinated to get their insight on what lies ahead for us. Right now, though, I want to get some insights on a shopping trip. Having packed 3 of my mates off to Norman Goodfellows, I want to know what they've bought and how they made their 400 Rand stretch as far as possible. So let's say a very, very warm welcome to one of the most exciting young winemakers in the country. I think I can say that because he still looks about 23, even though he's been making such exceptional wine for so long. Matt Day joins us from Klein Constantia. So too does my wine writing friend Tšepang Molisana, who somehow juggles writing beautifully about wine with selling vast tracts of property and appearing on television shows left, right, and center. And then one of South Africa's favorite food and wine celebrities, the original hard man on MasterChef South Africa and now Master South Africa, and consulting all over the place, mostly on Mozambican islands with his feet up and appearing to do very little work, which is the sign of someone who's done particularly well in life. Pete Goffe-Wood, our 3 guests for today. Guys, a warm welcome and lovely to have you on. Happy New Year and lovely to have you with us. Let's get a quick check-in. Matt, how was the Christmas and New Year period? Did you manage to get some time off pre-harvest?
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. Thanks, Dan. We were out on the farm in the Eastern Cape, which was great. We've got a family farm out there. And then spent a week in wilderness, so tough times. Now I'm back at work, and we actually started harvesting today. So it's been chaos. But it's lovely to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of harvest to come and join me. I'll get some thoughts at the end of the show on what that harvest might look for. Tšepang, what was the Christmas and New Year like for a property selling starlet who dabbles so successfully in the wine world?
Okay, Dan, please remind me to invite you to my lobola negotiations. You're doing very well. No, it was lovely. I think it's always a beautiful time of year to be with family. And of course, as retailers, we all know that it's our busiest time of the year. And we put some things in some pots that will be cooking. So, yeah, I don't want to be weird, but watch this space.
And Tšepang says that. Watch it very, very closely indeed. What about you, Pete? It's always a difficult time when you're a chef because while most people want to put their feet up and have a great time and celebrate, you're often the one who's trying to help them celebrate by directing traffic from the kitchen. Was there some time off? Did you get a bit of an escape?
I have to say that this is the first year in about 20 years that I took Christmas and New Year off. So I literally just arrived back from 3 weeks up the coast, Cape Infanta, Cape St. Francis, and then a weekend in Wilderness on the way back. So I've had the mother of all holidays. In fact, we literally drove past Norman Goodfellows on the way off the highway before we came home to pick up the wine, so I didn't forget about it. So no, I can't complain. It's the first Christmas and New Year I haven't worked in as long as I can remember. So we had the most unbelievable time.
Well, a very, very well-deserved break for one of the hardest working men in the industry. I have put you to work, though, as I have Matt and Tšepang, by dispatching you to Norman Goodfellows. And you had a very, very simple task. Take 400 Rand with you and come out with 2 bottles of, let's call it everyday midweek wine. In your case, Pete, probably breakfast wine, and then 1 bottle of something a little more special. We're going to kick off with the white wine. I've got mine sitting just in front of me, but I'm fascinated to see what you guys have come up with. Matt, your task, my money will be on a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc, given that you currently make 82 of them at Klein Constantia. Maybe I'm wrong. What was your white selection at Norman Goodfellows?
So Dan, I kind of have to stop you there, and I have to warn people that I didn't realize that Norman Goodfellows is actually closed on a Sunday. So I made a mission of a trip out there after having no time last week. Got out there yesterday, and I was like, oh, bugger, it's closed today. So I had to send a driver out this morning to go and get some wine for me. So in my glass is a very special wine. It is kind of a Sauvignon Blanc, and it's kind of from Constantia. So any guess as to what that is? It is my go-to wine when you go to a restaurant and you want something really good by the glass at a really good price. It's the Pete Blanc. It's 2023 vintage. So from our neighbors, obviously at Pete Verwachten, for me, it is the best go-to wine on the market at the moment. And it's probably on every single wine list out there. So you won't miss out on it. It's a fantastic, fantastic wine.
I think that's a terrific selection for a number of reasons. That chunk of Semillon that I think they often have in it adds a little bit of weight to the wines. You've got something with food as well as just a glass to see off the hot weather. What was the price of this, and what for you as probably the definitive Sauvignon Blanc expert in the country alongside Barto Extien, what is it that gives this wine a bit of a nudge onto your horizon?
So the price on this was actually more expensive than the red that I chose. So this was 79 Rand a bottle, breaking the bank. I had to sell a kidney for that. But it's crazy how the price expectation has just kind of shot up a lot in the last couple of years. I mean, it used to be 60 Rand. You could get a great bottle of white wine. Now we're at 79, 100 Rand. Times have become very tough. And every time we put up our bottle of wine, the price of our bottle of wine, people are complaining at us. So it's crazy to see, but it's an insane thing to see that Pete is still bringing out a fantastic wine at $80. It's fresh. It's got lovely minerality. It's got all the kind of contributing factors that are perfect for an easy, refreshing bottle or glass of Sauvignon Blanc or Sauv Blanc Sem. I think they might have some Chenin in it. I'm not actually sure, Dan. I'm not the expert.
I think you're right. I seem to remember once upon a time it was largely Sauvignon with a bit of Semillon. I think some Chenin has gravitated in as Brad has experimented in his cellar. All right, there's our first one. I think that's a cracking choice, but 79 Rand a bottle. Very nicely done indeed, Matt. Leaving you with 340 Rand and 1 cent for your remaining 2 bottles. Let's move on to Tšepang and your white choice. What did the breakout star of My Kitchen Rules decide upon for a bottle of white?
I thought that was our secret then. So my selection was the Riet Filet Concrete Chardonnay from Robertson. So I particularly love this wine because I think it celebrates what a lot of champions of Cup Classique and Bubbly in South Africa have long loved about the Robertson Wine Valley. It's got a lot of the salinity and the linearity that makes some of the sparklers that we absolutely love in summer. And I also think, at this time of year, you don't want a necessarily heavy, bulky, oaky Chardonnay. So this is an unoaked Chardonnay. And what makes this particularly special is that Philip Jonker developed this concept right in Robertson. one of their neighbors. So it's a very special wine. They've actually formed a little bit of a collective. And I actually think the thing that they're not saying is that it's a fight against unoaked Sauvignon Blanc and Chenin Blanc. I think that was the idea, that they've got these really, really special wines, but because of the ABC crowd, they're just not reaching, the light summer wine lovers. So it's an ode to Chablis and it's an ode to Robertson as well.
I had a look when I was doing my selection, and there were a number of wines. In fact, your one included that I looked at. And the unoaked Chardonnay space, both in terms of value, but also proliferation, was certainly there. And just as we're seeing more and more Sauvignon Blanc with a bit of wood, so we're seeing more and more Chardonnay without wood, which is an interesting turn of affairs. What did this bottle cost you? And do you think that this is the year where unoaked Chardonnay becomes a fairly mainstream part of our collective South African drinking pattern?
Look, it's a bit pricey, 120. It's not a student wine, but it is lovely. I don't know is the sad answer. I think that for a very large portion of the wine drinking public, Chardonnay hasn't gotten the love that it deserves. And I think that Sauvignon Blanc in South Africa, all credit to Matt and his compatriots in Constantia, Sauvignon Blanc is excellent and it continues to draw a good crowd. So I think that this does speak to the same sort of consumer that, you want something wallet friendly, salad friendly, swimming pool friendly, summer day friendly. We had it overlooking the gorgeous lawns at the Fair Lawns. And I think it is that kind of wine that you just think, you know what, it's a little hot. I want nothing more than to crack open a nice melon. And it's got that green tint as well. So I wish, I hope, and I pray, but you never know.
The Calcrete project, there are wines from 6 of the producers in Robertson, all aiming for a very similar style, but with their own particular interpretation. A lot of fun to drink collectively when you've got a long evening dinner party to get through. All right, 2 down. Let's head over to the chef. Pete Goffe-Wood, what's on the white wine agenda from you?
Okay, so my wine was probably my second most expensive, and that's the, whoops, going the wrong way, the Moras Pekinese Kloof Chenin. This we stumbled upon during our last season of Ultimate Brewmaster. We were shooting in series for a week, and this was our go-to wine. It's not over here. It's 109 rand, so it's good value for money, and it's a lovely full-bodied fruity Shiraz that's kind of indicative of those kind of hot areas, sort of bordering on the Swartland. Obviously, a little bit more water than the Swartland, but still very rich. And again, a magnificent quaffing wine. I'm a massive Chenin fan, and this one is as easy drinking as they come. And again, not overly expensive. I say my second red was my budget wine, but I jumped at the chance at using this one because I haven't seen it in a while. And it was one that was a fantastic quaffing wine in serious heat, and it set us in good stead for a number of weeks in that region. So that's definitely, it's become one of my stable favorites. It's one of those go-tos that is usually a bottle or 2 in the fridge, although not being here for 3 weeks is absolutely nothing in the fridge, but what do you do? But yeah, certainly fruity and very, very drinkable.
And not dissimilar, I'd imagine, to Matt's Baton Blanc, wine that's equally at home in a glass as you're seeing off the afternoon heat, as it is alongside any manner of dishes.
Well, for me, the Baton Blanc is always Matt's good choice. It's always been one of my favorites. That for me was, I think, without fail to say that was my go-to wine in during the pandemic, because we were always able to get stock mysteriously from the farm. And without doubt, I think as a white blend, probably the most underrated and underpriced white wine in the country. I think you can't get better value than the Baton Blanc. I think it's a standalone wine for me that never fails to impress and never fails to deliver. And the fact that they can still offer that wine at under $100 for me is hugely impressive. This Moras is brilliant because, you say, it's got all that fruit from that region. It's got that heat, so it's got that fruity tendency. So yeah, a good go-to as far as I'm concerned.
All right, that's 3 terrific wines at great prices. The Baton Blanc from Matt, the Rietvlei Calcrete from Tšepang and the Maras Chenin. But Pete, what about mine? Well, I went for wine. I thought, well, if I've got Matt on, I've got to have a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc. It never speaks to me.
Well done.
A good price. And also found, Pete, somebody who you know rather well. So that gives me a couple of people to give me some feedback. I went for Mr. Bruce Jack.
Good man.
And I like going to Bruce because he's obviously a front for some illegal company based on the quality and price. It can't possibly be right. But he's always doing something new and different. This is his Sauvignon Blanc, his inspected range, I think it's called. 2022, so it's now 2 years old as of 2 weeks ago. And at 85 rand, I thought that was really good value. Matt, I was going to ask you about this particular wine, though. It's got here very clearly on the label notes of gooseberry and apple pie with a twist of lime. And if there's one wine more than any other that gets these kind of adjectives thrust upon a label, it is Sauvignon Blanc. What's your take on these touch of gooseberry and this approach to Sauvignon Blanc? Is it something you're happy with, or does the purist in you look down his nose?
Yeah, I think I am a bit of a purist. It's quite tough with Sauvignon Blanc, and the reason why I didn't go for a straight savvy is Sauvignon Blanc is hit and miss, and very often if you go for the very entry level Sauvignon Blancs, they're quite harsh in their acidities. I mean, Artie was mocking me the other day. He said, "Yeah, I use Sauvignon Blanc to wash my dishes with." So sometimes we can get it really wrong. My other favorite joke about, now I'm ripping Sauvignon Blanc off. My other favorite joke is Sauvignon Blanc's the only thing that make your mother-in-law smile, and that's purely because of the acidity. So the problem is it's just a cringe reaction. So when it comes to Sauvignon Blanc, my feeling is that Sauvignon Blanc should be one of your core ranges. It should be a focus. It should be something that you're putting a lot of work into. It's not just a cash cow that, I'm going to release the 2024 Sauvignon Blanc next week because I want to be the first one on the market. It needs to be something that, unless we do this, we're going to become that ABS, it's going to be ABS instead of ABC, that no one's going to be drinking Sauvignon Blanc because it's perceived as being cheap and cheerful. I think that, sorry, going off your question, I'm slaying Sauvignon Blancs that aren't properly Sauvignon Blancs, or that cheap and cheerful. My worst phrase is tutti frutti. Sometimes Sauvignon Blancs become that people make them in a way that they are just super aromatic and they focus on the nose, and they forget that people actually drink wine for the palate and for that foodability to go with it. I don't think that's a word, but that salinity or that texture that goes really well with food. And that's the big difference, and that's why I think a lot of people are going for Chenin Blanc, because Chenin often has that texture that can match up with great dishes. Don't get me wrong, I still love Sauvignon Blanc. I think we need to put a lot more work into it than just going tutti frutti. In terms of flavors, it's also quite nice to see that people aren't just going for pyrazine, or the days of pyrazine and pyrazine bombs are kind of done. So it's more thiol driven, so more fruit or more tropical fruit. That's where that gooseberry character comes in, which is fantastic. So hats off to Bruce Jack. I think that's a fantastic wine. He's doing a great job out there, and he's clearly going for a fantastic style.
Hi, Professor of Sauvignon Blanc at the Constantia Institute of White Wine. Just quickly, what do you make of Pete's choice of the Maras Chenin and Tšepang's choice of the Culcrete?
Great calls. Maras is always doing some good stuff. I really like what they're doing out there. And he's also a fantastic guy, just having fun. And I think David at Cederberg he's doing quite a lot with Maras, and he's helped him out a lot in the old days. So great choice. I get the whole Chardonnay thing, and I get the whole unwooded Chardonnay thing. I think the one thing that's happening is you can see Chenin going more towards a wooded style because people are looking for that. It's becoming a lot more serious. So there definitely is that gap for Chardonnay to become a lot lighter and more delicate. Look for minerality, look for texture, as opposed just to backing it up with wood and winemaking techniques. So fantastic choices. Great stuff.
Pete, my wine from Bruce Jack. You've already mentioned the Baton Blanc. What do you make of the Bruce Jack one, and then the choice of the unwooded Chardonnay from Tšepang?
For me, I love the Bruce Jack wines. I think he's one of those mavericks. He was one of the first winemakers who ever started buying in grapes that he wasn't growing himself. When he first opened in Flagstone, they were based in what was then, I think it's what is now Fairman's in the original waterfront. They established a winery there, and he was one of the first guys who was picking various pockets of parcels of wine all over the Western Cape and making wine for them. And he's managed to do that ever since. He spent some time with Constellation, but he's now back doing his own label stuff. And for me, he has the ability to. I'd be very curious to know where that Sauvignon Blanc is from, because he has the ability of picking certain varietals from certain places and making exceptional wines from. And I mean, I still remember that Bruce Jack range coming across it in the UK 3 years ago in Tesco's, and we were coughing like crazy. And even there, it was the same. I mean, this is the beauty of it. Based on even at 20 to 1, I think it was the equivalent of 85 rand when we were drinking it when we discovered it in Tesco's. But no, for me, he's Sauvignon Blanc. He first started doing stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if it's from Elim. Because he's doing a lot of stuff in the Agulhas area at the moment, and I know he's doing a lot of stuff in Elim in particular. So I wouldn't be surprised from there, and say very sharp, crisp, great minerality. He's a. In fact, I'll just show you this for a matter of example. He just dropped off a box of this new range he's just doing now called Off the Charts. He's always up to something. This arrived while I was away. A whole range of this new stuff that he's doing called Off the Charts. That's a Chenin. I've got a Claret Blanc, a Viognier, a Cinsault, and a Pinotage to get through this weekend. Well, this week. So I'm always been a big fan of Bruce Jack's wines.
And a worthy addition to our lineup for today. Well done, Dan. Congratulations. Tšepang, what do you make of the white wine selection from Matt, from Pete, and from myself?
Wow, no, some really lovely choices. I was enamored when I heard the word Maras because I recently met him for the first time. And in fact, I was so tempted to select his Chenin. And then, of course, I thought, in parallel with his Chenin is also Stellan Rust. There's so many really, really good Chenins. But, Martin Lambrecht, I think, is just one of those really, really good-natured people, very warm and sparkly and kind. I met him and he gave me an extra special glass at Winex. So I got to drink out of Riedel instead of the ordinary. So you'll always get kind words from me. I was really, really endeared also by the mention of Buitenverwachting. I think that there's some really special things happening out there. And when you said Bruce Jack, I also thought, there actually are some really nice selections in this price range, because the Cabernet Sauvignon is one of the best wines I've ever had. And this happens every time with Bruce Jack, and I'm glad I'm not alone. Where you receive the wine and then you're like, okay, I want to keep some of it for, a special time, because I know it's going to be really good. And then you end up pouring it and then almost being like, oh gosh, I should have had it with some really, really special people, because every single time that wine hits the mark.
All right. Well, I think collectively we've done a more than decent job on the white wine. Well done, everybody. Let's move on to the red, and back to you, Matt. What has the King of Sauvignon Blanc conjured up from the red wine division?
Okay, Dan. So I had a feeling here. My feeling was that I'd rather eat bully beef for the rest of the month and not pay for school fees. And life's too short to drink bad red wine. So I got this one. I don't know if you can see the label. So it's a 2004 Chateau Latour. I think it should be a good vintage, and it'll go down really well. So enjoy, guys. So I sold my kidney to buy that bottle of wine as well, and it's worth it, I promise you.
That would be 400,000 rand, not 400 rand.
So I actually went down for a trip down memory lane, and I pulled out a Chateau Libertas. It was a 2022 Chateau Libertas. I actually just remember it from varsity days. It's 72 rand a bottle, which is not too bad. It's always a really good, easy drinking red wine. One thing that off topic here, but working in France, what I realized is if you want to go for like the really good, if you want to find something for 3-4 euros, I guess that was quite a long time ago, you never go for the big Bordeaux or for any of the big brands. You go for the Rhone Valley and you can find something that is really easy to drink and quaffable. I think the Libertas is exactly that. It's a local legend. It's been around forever. It's a wine that we don't actually give enough attention to. I think they maybe just modernized it and commercialized it too much in the last couple of years. But if you look at some of those older vintages, some fantastic stuff. So cheers, guys.
I think that's a terrific selection and a lovely slice of South African heritage. I always wonder what might have happened if the Chateau Libertas had kind of followed a Meerlust route earlier in its years and become more iconic at the top end of the price level. Very happy with where it is, as I think many people are. And that is a great addition. I had some 94 the other day, which was drinking beautifully. Okay, there is your red wine. What about you, Tšepang? What was your everyday drinking bottle of red?
Okay, ladies, let's get information. I actually really like the Spear Good Natured Organic Shiraz. So it retails very nicely at 99 Rand. So I'm just under 100 Rand. It's a very new thing for me to be in budget. I work in the business of negotiation, but I did it.
I think we were actually at the launch of that together. It was one of those wines, one of those categories where I think as people in the wine industry, we do sometimes raise an eyebrow the moment organic is prominently splashed across some wine that is good for the environment. We always wonder, is the wine going to match up? But I think you've had enough of it to know that, yes, it's good for the planet, but it's also pretty good for the palate as well.
Yeah, I mean, so this is from the Olifantsfontein Review in the Karoo. And there's actually been a bunch of really good wine coming out of the Karoo. I don't know if it's that hot, arid nature. Matt will know better than me. But I think that, there's something really special happening in the Karoo in general. And of course, I trust Tanya's judgment because it really does take a lot, like you're saying, to put your name on not only a wine like this, but a category like this. And I think that, Spear have been pioneers in the sustainable wine and farming game for a very long time. But what makes this wine really special, besides the nice time that we had, Dan, is that it's delicious and it goes so well with a lot of different foods. So it's got those amazing mulberry and plum characteristics that you do want to expect from a Shiraz or Syrah, but it doesn't have any of the funkiness, the nastiness that, I think a lot of people are afraid of with organic wine. And more than anything, I think you feel really kind to yourself and the planet when you're done. So I also suggest that you recycle the bottle so that you're part of the process.
The more you drink, the better the planet. Good wine at under 100 Rand, and it is made in the best possible way. All right, I think that's a great choice. On to you, Chef. Your choice of red. What have we gone with?
Okay, so I went with, whoops, keep doing this the wrong way, with the Chameleon, the Jordan Chameleon. This is the Cab Sav Merlot. This was my El Cheapo. This was $85, and for me, drinking fabulously. Although I just wanted to say two things. That Matt's choice was absolutely brilliant. Two things, Matt. You got to keep the Latour for the Potjiekos competition, but the Chateau Libertas, we did the same. Dan, I stumbled upon a wine shop up in Cape St. Francis, and we drank 3 or 4 bottles of the Chateau Libertas 94 just within 5 days ago, and at the princely sum of 209 Rand, and it was absolutely magnificent. We had a couple of wine people there, and so we did a blind tasting, and we said, it's old, guess, just thumbsuck of where you think it comes from. And everyone was completely and utterly blown away. We came up with the old yellow label of Chateau Libertas 94, and it was drinking immaculately. But back to my own wine, this for me is it's a great two kind of red that's again every day. It's the kind of thing that I probably keep stocked in the shelves more than I do the really good stuff. Mainly just because when Elise has her friends over and they open stuff, I stock the shelves with that so they don't touch the real good stuff. But it's drinking beautifully. I love it. I mean, this is my cheapest of the 3 wines, and 85 Rand. It's smooth, it's drinkable, it's great with anything on the braai. It really is a great blend and a really, really drinkable wine.
And it's also, in bringing together Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, probably doing the trick of a Cabernet Sauvignon on its own at that sort of price is likely to be a little on the tannic side and not quite so gentle. Still getting some of that Merlot body and that Cabernet Sauvignon body and strength, but the Merlot just ironing it out, I suppose.
Definitely.
All right.
Oh,
good choice. All right, well, there we go. Pete's red. Let's have a look at my selection, and the name is familiar because he's popped up already on the show. Pete, you went with a Shannon. I've gone with Maris's Cinsault, which came in at just 99 Rand a bottle. The Trickster by Martin, also featured on My Kitchen Rules, as we've heard. A lovely, lovely guy. And Cinsault, I think, Tšepang, we've been to a number of tastings in the last year or so up in Johannesburg where Cinsault has featured, and it's a grape that's not just being taken a bit more seriously, but is being delivered by more and more winemakers. And when it's still at this kind of price, it really is an appealing prospect.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think, one thing about especially the winemakers of the Scotland, right? They're taking full advantage of the fact that they've got those amazing heritage grapes. I remember at the beginning of my sort of wine broadcasting career, I had so many conversations with Jenny Chris Williams where we threatened to have like Cinsault and like a bowl of cherries and some cheese. So even at this time of the year, I think that it's just that kind of red wine. It's not too heavy, it's not too bulky, it's light enough and lovely enough for you to feel that you've had the red wine experience without the indigestion. So it's lovely.
Pete, from a chef's perspective, you've been cooking with wine for many, many years. And by that, I mean mostly drinking it while you cook, as opposed to just using it in food. When you kicked off Cinsault, was it something you saw much of? And has the journey of Cinsault in South Africa been a visibly appreciable one over the last few years?
I think it's become in sharp focus in the last maybe 4 or 5 years. We had always tended to make heavier style, more robust red wines, and I think in the last 5 or 6 years I've seen a sort of a lighter, and the Cinsaults and some of the Grenache that's coming through is much more approachable, particularly when you consider the climate in which it's grown and the fact that we have these long fabulous summers. You kind of those lighter style of red wines or easier drinking have certainly come into their own, and now no restaurant worth its salt doesn't have a Cinsault or two on a menu, whereas 5 or 6 years ago you'd struggle to find a Cinsault on a menu. You might have a blend that had Cinsault in it, but I think we've become far more appreciative in terms of our drinking style of wanting something more floral, more fragrant, more suited to hot summers, but still keeping in the red stable.
Well, Cinsault's biggest contribution over the years, other than being one half of Pinotage from the 1920s on, was forming in the 70s a big part of that Chateau Libertas when it first came to prominence. We've heard Pete's thoughts on the Chateau Libertas. Matt, for you as a winemaker, the choices of red from Pete, from Tšepang, and from myself, what are your thoughts?
Fantastic. Well done, guys. But all I know is I'm going to clean up in the last round because I've got a lot more cash to spend on my last bottle. So let's see what happens. It's crazy, Dan. I also almost selected the Maris as well, and it just shows how good his wines are and how good the value is, I guess. So they've done a fantastic job with those Maris wines. One thing that I looked at for value wines is I actually went out and looked for some Malbec, and unfortunately there were a couple of Malbecs, but they weren't enough to kind of choose from. I think Malbec is one of those wines like Cinsault, and I think the wave of Cinsault, it's on the crest at the moment. And if people get Malbec right as well, for an entry level or cheaper kind of just really good, fun drinking red wine, Malbec is that, because it's got the fruit, it's got the intensity, and it doesn't have that over-the-top power that Cabernet has. So you don't have to make it expensive, So Malbec would have been a great choice, but unfortunately, I don't think enough of us focus enough on Malbec in South Africa. But that's off topic. Great selection. I think red is a lot more difficult to get value or extra value in terms of price. So I think we've done very well with this. So yeah, I'm loving this Libertas at the moment. Chateau Libertas. I could have poured it into that Latour bottle and poured it for guests, and I don't think they would have been any wiser. I think that's a good choice going forward. So it's still a chateau. It's from a chateau. We'll claim it.
Well, Chateau Latour will be delighted to hear that one of South Africa's preeminent winemakers believes it tastes exactly like Chateau Libertas. we'll be sure to put that one out on social media. Mentioning the Malbecs, if you spent time over in Mendoza, you'll know that they do tend to categorize the Malbec into two broad spaces. One is the finer wine, but the other, what they refer to as their fruit bombs drink in the first 2 or 3 years. And nothing too subtle or gentle about them, but just great fun to drink, as Matt says. And perhaps that's something in a few years' time we'll be talking about a little bit more on the show. All right, we'll check in now on how much money is left as we go into our final one. Kicking off again with you, Matt, you had 400 Rand. How much have you spent on your first 2 bottles?
So Dan, can I stop you quickly? Just for this month of January, we should challenge Norman Goodfellows to lower their delivery fee. I think it's now 600 Rand minimum order. We should have made it 400 Rand, which would have helped us out a little bit. I have 240 or 250 Rand left, basically, for my last wine.
All right, 250 Rand can get you a fair few bottles of very good wine. What did you come up with?
I came up with a very special wine to me. It is the Meerlust Red 2020. This is the very first farm that I worked at in South Africa. I did my first internship there. It is my journey to winemaking started with Chris Williams at Meerlust. Meerlust Red was always a wine that they released on subpar Rubicon vintages, and it's nice to see that the red has become a constant figure in terms of their lineup. In the Meerlust standard, you know, it's always going to be very good. It's just declassified Rubicon fruits and all the rest going into it. Probably quite a big production, but that came in at 249 Rand. So I'm bang on for 400 bucks, and I think it's a very good choice for the selection today. I'm definitely going to smash this tonight with my steak. It's going to be fantastic.
Not just a superb winemaker, he's a pretty decent accountant as well, with a fine eye for wine. And I love that throwback to your Meerlust time. It completes the circle very, very nicely indeed. All right, 400 Rand, extremely well spent by Matt Day at Klein Constantia. Tšepang, how much had you spent on your first 2 bottles?
Oh gosh, you know, the Rand is low. So at this point, you know, we spent 120 Rand on one wine, 99 Rand on another, and there's 181 Rand between you, me, and the end of the month then. So I selected Steenberg 5 Lives 2020. So this is a beautiful Bordeaux style blend consisting of 3 varieties, Merlot, Cab, and the Malbec that Matt so loves. And this wine costs only 175 Rand. So I'll even have 6 Rand for parking.
Very, very nicely done indeed. I think we were also at that launch a couple of years ago, and it's a really nice red. I'm going to come back to Matt in a moment about reds out of Constantia, because it's something I don't think we always pay quite enough attention to, simply because they do the whites so well. So, Pang, excellent choice and getting your budget in nicely. Pete, what have you got left to spend on your last bottle?
Well, I also underspent. I managed to come in at the princely sum of 385 Rand for my trio, and I ended up, funny you should say Malbec, I ended up with, I keep moving this, the Deturin. I'm not supposed to say delicate, I'm supposed to say delicate. But this came in at 185 bucks, which I think is hugely undervalued. And it's a blend of Malbec, Merlot, Cab Franc, Cab Sav, and Petit Verdot. I'm just check my notes to see if I'm right there. But that's but yeah, that was 185 Rand, and for me, it's this I would have thought was 250, 280, close on 300 when I drank it, but at 185. I was blown away by them. Obviously, it's their kind of entry level for their crowning glory. But man alive, this is drinking magnificently, and I think that was the good value for money, because I actually asked the guys in the shop. I said, "Come on, guys, I don't want to blow the budget and put the 400. You got to give me something fantastic." And both the guys in the shop said, "Oh, the most undervalued red blend we've got that's under 200 bucks. That'll." And I said, it's got to win me the afternoon. You've got to give me, and when we opened up this afternoon, let it breathe, quite delicious. It's easy drinking. It's rich. It's everything you want for a red blend. there is that little bit of fruit punch from the Malbec. It really is quite spectacular. And 385, who can argue?
Given the Fusion 5 and you go right up the top, things like Book 17 and the Black Lion, 185 rand for a bottle of red from Detora, and you take it and you run, and you hope they don't realize they made a mistake with the pricing.
Exactly.
Well then, Pete, I'm jealous. Good call.
You've got your Latour, Matt, so you don't really need to worry.
No, he's got to keep that for the Poikikos competition.
No problems. Maybe we should do some ingenues for that rather. So that's not the budget show. That's not the budget show.
I think I'm coming to that Poiki competition whenever it may be. All right, those are your three. So what have I got? I worked out, I spent 85 rand on my Bruce Jack Sauvignon Blanc. I spent 99 rand on my Maracinso. So that was 184 rand. That gave me 216 rand to spend. But like you guys, I saved some money. I only spent 215 rand of my 260. And Tšepang, we were thinking similarly, not because I also went Steenberg, but I went here. I found some 2018 Merlot out of Steenberg. Again, post sideways, Merlot still raises the occasional question mark, but a wine that I've had a number of times. And the fact that I was able to get one that was now 6 years old, technically, just add a little more to the appeal. It also appeals to some other people. I see Megan Hendricks-Colwell, who's watching from Canada. Hello, Megan. Says she loves Merlot. Glad to hear it. Denzel Jonathan Swartz also watching the show at the moment. Nice wine selections. Says Denzel has got a busy year in the wine industry ahead of him. So that was my red selection. Matt, I want to ask you about both mine and about Tšepang's, because we both went Steenberg with our red wines. Do you think that the red of Constantia get a fair hearing? Do we give them enough time and consideration? And if not, is it actually your fault for making the white wine so well?
Dan, I feel like it was peer pressure, but well done. Just because I was on the show, we had to have 2 Constantia wines, and I guess with the Bait and Blanc, almost a third. Good call. The problem with Constantia is we kind of don't want to go out and beat the drum of all the wines that we make, and we want to try and be focused. So the core of our focus is always going to be cool climate. The question is, what is cool climate, and how can you work that into your terroir and your wine style? So cool climate for us at Klein Constantia means Sauvignon Blanc, but there are other pockets within Constantia where you can use cool climate to make some really good, elegant, fantastic drinking red wines. So Constantia is a place to go for a wine that's not going to be over the top jammy. It's not going to be over the top wooded. One term that we always use, and I'm sure you guys have heard it, is we don't want to make a Robert Parker style wine. And that's where you go, you over ripen it in a very hot region. You smash it with 100% new oak, and you put an extra 0 or 2 zeros onto the price tag. Constantia's never going to do that. So my explanation, we do an estate red at Klein Constantia. Unfortunately, was out of our budget to put into this. It is made in the Klein Constantia way. It has the same Klein Constantia elegance and finesse to it. And fantastic to see that Steenberg has popped up. I mean, if you look at how well they did in Platters this year and a whole lot of the other awards that they did, they're in the Sauvignon Blanc top 10. So I think Elunda has done a fantastic job there, and that she's really put them onto the map in terms of showing off a fantastic style. So they're doing really well with the Magna Carta. My favorite wine from Steenberg at the moment, and it's probably one of my favorite Constantia Reds, is their Nebbiolo. And that's a wine that's always underlooked in South Africa. Their Nebbiolo, if you can get some, take as much as you possibly can. I don't know if you ever had, sorry, off topic, Abingdon on the show, Dan. That's the second best Nebbiolo in South Africa after Steenberg. So a good call if you can get some. I don't know what the price is. I don't think it would have fit into the show as well today. But great to see Constantia representing so well.
All right, there's your message to take away. Don't just look at the whites of Constantia, look at the reds as well, in particular that Nebbiolo. Maybe a Nebbiolo show on the horizon. It's been so much fun running through this with all three of you. And thank you, not just for taking the time, but coming up with some fascinating wine for us to put together. Before I let you go, because you've each got 3 bottles of wine to finish before anybody else comes home. You have to share them with. The year ahead, Tšepang, what does 2024 have in store for the wine writer extraordinaire that is Tšepang Molisana?
Okay, fine. Breaking news. You got it out of me. Okay, so it's very exciting. I've been writing for Wine.Coza for just over 10 years. Judy and I have had a lovely conversation, particularly about the podcast that refuses to be recorded. And we've decided that we're going to do a little wine club based off of Wine.Coza. So not only am I going to write, but of course I'm going to get back to my retail roots. And what's also very exciting is I'm now in the final year of my studies at Gibbs. So I should spend a little bit less time drinking wine and a little bit more time in the books. But I hope to see you at a tasting or two in Johannesburg.
I'm sure it won't be too long before that happens. Exciting news for Tšepang. Pete, the year ahead, other than the Mozambican nudist resort you seem to spend an extraordinary amount of time at, what's exciting for you this year?
Well, based on my work at the Mozambique nudist resort, I'm endorsing a new range of Factor 100 sun creams, but that we'll work on later. No, we're looking forward to shooting season 9 of Ultimate Braai Master, which we'll be doing in February, and we'll be doing that in KZN. So we'll be doing top to bottom all round KZN. So that'll take care of the first quarter of this year. So very excited about that. And then the rest of the year will unfold as it unfolds.
All right, we'll see plenty of Pete, no doubt. Matt, you said today was day 1 of harvest. What's the prediction? How is the 2024 harvest looking?
Crazy, Dan. I never expected to be harvesting today. It's the 15th of January. It's unusual for us. We usually start much later in the month. Last year we did start on the 16th, but I thought that was quite a weird year. So I'm still very unprepared for harvest, but I'm ready to get going. I can't wait. I mean, harvest is the biggest chunk of the year. I think I'm going to become a movie star for this. All my appearances on the Dan Nichols show. I think I've done very well, so I'm going to quit my day job. No, actually, please don't. Exciting year. My big focus at Klein Constantia and Wilke is actually a Wilke project. So that's our red wine project in Stellenbosch. And I'm trying to become a red winemaker. So watch this space, look out for it. I think we've achieved it with the Sauvignon Blanc, and we've achieved it with the Klein Constantia, and Wilke is my new challenge. Otherwise, I'm just trying to survive.
We'll look out for that, and we'll in fact look out for Matt in the coming months on the show. We'll let him get his harvests done, but we'll have a real focus on Wilke and the project there, which I'm looking forward to. Megan watching, arriving Wednesday, would love to connect. I have a guest lodge bringing international guests to visit South Africa and safaris. Well, we'll go and have a look at that, and hopefully we'll have some more South African wine finding favor with international tourists. I want to end, Pete, just going back to you, and this is certainly not wanting to end on a low note, but rather a note of celebrating somebody very special. And you put up a wonderful post on Facebook about a good friend of the industry who we sadly lost just before the end of last year. Our upcoming show on Thursday will be a tribute show to the late, great Michael Olivier, and will feature, amongst others, Jenny Chris Williams, Sam Lizzle will join us as well, say to Emile Joubert, a few friends of Michael's. I know he was somebody who's not just a great friend to you, Pete, and a great friend to the industry, but a real mentor and someone who had a huge role in your own cooking career.
Still a bit raw. No, he was a mountain of a man. I think he was old school. He was the consummate gentleman. He was the sort of the maitre d' of everything wine and food. I said in my post, my first recollection was we were in a competition together. We were both, us and Parks were both finalists, and we won on the day. And for me, his magnanimous congratulations. There was no jealousy. There was no malice. There was this unbelievably gentle man who came across. We'd never met before, to come and say, "Well done. We heard about your menu," and we became good friends. And we were and have been ever since. And I think his knowledge not just of food and wine, but of restaurant service. He comes from a bygone era of attentive service, of the right way of doing things, and we will not see his ilk again, I fear, because he comes from an old world where the customer was always first. The attention to detail throughout a restaurant, from candles being upright, knives and glasses being polished, to the moment you phoned and made a booking, to the moment he handed you your jacket when you left the establishment. There was just this seamless hospitality, and he was like that when he worked in a restaurant. He was like that when he worked and worked with fellow professionals like himself, and he was always a fountain of knowledge. You could phone him up and say, I'm desperate for a restaurant, or we try, and he would just say, oh, I'll email and send you something. Here's something we use. Here's something Lamasai used to work on. Here's something that Topsy sent me. He was this wealth of knowledge, that a complete open book, and his influence is indelible. There is a swathe of chefs and people who work in the restaurant who have Michael to thank for their work ethic and the way they hold themselves when they write, when they work in restaurants, when they taste wine, when they cook food. He was a remarkable man.
He was indeed, and we will hear more about him and the impact he had on the food and wine, and particularly wine industry, on the show on Thursday. For today, though, we thank three very special guests for all of the hard work in going out to find those 3 bottles of wine that fitted in to the 400 Rand budget. So to Matt, to Tšepang, to Pete, guys, thank you very, very much indeed. That was a great deal of fun. Enjoy what remains of those 3 bottles. In the case of a certain chef, I suspect not much at all. Best of luck for a wonderful, wonderful year ahead. Matt, keep us posted on the harvest. Tšepang, good luck with the final year of studies. And Pete will be looking out for that new series of Brian Master Series 9. It's always a cracker of a show, and we look forward to it. But to all of you, thank you so much for your Norman Goodfellows adventure, and for stocking up. You've given us some great recommendations, and I shall be trying all of them myself as well. Really do appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dan.
Cheers, Dan. Cheers, guys.
So,
Thank you, everybody.
very special guests on the show today with their January budget blues ideas, how to get the best out of 400 Rand when shopping at Norman Goodfellows. We had Matt with his collection, Tšepang with hers, and Pete with his. And you can catch all of those on our social media channels if you want to make exactly sure of what they purchased. That does it for today, our very first show of 2024. We'll be back on Thursday as we pay tribute to Michael Olivier with, amongst others, Jenny Chris Williams, Sam Lazelle, and Emile Gibert, and possibly 1 or 2 others. For now, enjoy the rest of your evening, enjoy your wine, and I'll see you back on Thursday. Goodbye.